Good afternoon, everyone. I am Hande. I'm a PhD candidate at Bocconi University, and this is a joint paper that we did with Professor Asfe. Yes, there is no fertility in the title, but basically we're trying to make sense of what are the cultural factors that are affecting the divergences that we see across countries in terms of the second demographic transition behaviors, which is also marked by non-marital birth rates. As you all know, during the second half of the 20th century, Western societies has experienced a profound change in family formation and fertility behaviors, led on by the Nordic countries. They witnessed a weakening in the centrality of the family, marked by liberal demographic behaviors such as cohabitation, non-marital birth rates, divorce, and delay in marriage and parenthood. Demographers studying these trends within the framework of second demographic transition argued that societies have entered into successive stages of global demographic change, and a big driver of this global change was a global ideational shift. They argued that the shift was mainly based on structural factors, one being the increase in female education and the other one as the material security provided by the industrialized economies during the post-war period. Altogether, these structural forces fostered the Maslowian higher order needs and Englehart's so-called post-materialist values, which prioritized freedom of expression, self-realization and autonomy over conformity to societal expectations, which in return deterred individuals from the early responsibilities of marriage and parenthood. Though the Western societies experienced a shared value shift and shared demographic patterns to some extent, the onset and the intensity of these demographic behaviors associated with second demographic transition showed great cross-country variation. Previous studies challenged the framework's developmentalist perspective and observed that demographic trends actually demonstrate certain divergences rather than convergences, even among European countries. For example, the laggards of second demographic transition, which are often marked as the Southern European countries, they were showing the expected decrease in fertility, but the expected trends in non-marital birth rates or cohabitation were not seen. And another example would be coming from the vanguards of second demographic transition, mainly Nordic countries. Quite different from the expectations, they started to see stagnations in divorce and non-marital birth ratios. So there is this debate on the framework's ability and capacity for providing an explanation to the contemporary demographic trends, mainly the differences across societies. So an essential question would obviously be to what degree the new demographic trends can be explained using a global ideational shift. But the main question that we are concerned about is rather how does the long-standing cultural history takes part in the differences that we see today. The theory incorporates, of course, it incorporates cultural factors, but rather it incorporates it as a path dependency that is impacting the velocity of the shifts going on, but rather we want to provide a finer-tuned cultural approach that draws attention to the long-standing cultural traits. We want to ask whether societies pre-exposed to certain values due to intergenerational transmission of culture are more likely to be the leaders of second demographic transition, and we want to see which values would matter and in what direction. After a review of the literature, we decided to take on 5 inherited values: gender egalitarianism, institutional distrust, and generalized trust, which we expect to see a positive association with second demographic transition patterns, and also religiosity and family ties, which we expect to see a negative impact. So our aim is to study the impact of long-standing inherited cultural values to the second-order transition levels. Therefore, we necessitated a data that can go back in time and show us the values of previous generations. Unfortunately, important value surveys like General Social Survey and European Social Survey initiated during the 1980s, so it wasn't possible for us to go back across generations. So what we did, we adopted Algan and Kahuk's take on epidemiological approach, which allows us to proxy the inherited characteristics that individuals took from previous generations. Their idea is based on the value formation argument, which says that the values that we have today are mainly determined by two forces, one being the contemporary environment and the other being the values that we inherit from our ancestors. So what we would be doing was that to differentiate the inherited component from the contemporary values that we have today, we exploited individuals whose parents, grandparents, or grand-grandparents have migrated from a certain country to United States. And to differentiate, we control all contemporary environmental factors and then took the remainder as the proxy of the inherited values. Let me be more specific about our empirical approach. So it is composed of two main stages. In the first stage, we use individual level regressions. For example, where individuals are second, third, or fourth generation immigrants. The sample are retrieved from US General Social Survey. So these individuals are not directly impacted by their home countries because they never lived in that country, but they are influenced through their ancestors' values while being raised by them, of course. In the right-hand side, we have an exhaustive set of controls accounting for the contemporary environment. And in the left-hand side, we have the values, the contemporary values that was measured by General Social Survey. So and also in the right-hand side, we have this dummy for the country of origin. So the idea was that if we control enough for the contemporary environment, in a regression where we have the contemporary values as a dependent variable, then what we'll be left with was the impact of the inherited value, which we signify here as the beta 1. Then we take every individual's beta 1 on a certain value, let's say like gender egalitarianism. We group these individuals according to country of origin, and then we take an aggregate, and we consider that aggregate measure as the that specific country's gender egalitarianism, inherited gender egalitarianism value, let's say. Then, in the second stage, we take this proxy and add it as the independent variable. This would be a country-level regression where the dependent variable is a second-order transition behavior, which in our case is non-marital birth rates. And then, in line with the theory's argument, what is important to point out here is that we take this proxy's interaction with female education, since this big structural change happened over the years. So the estimation and sampling of the countries is quite tedious, so I don't want to get into that right now, but if you have more questions, I will be happy to answer them during the Q&A. Let's pass on to the results for now. So here you're looking at the coefficients of the interaction of inherited values with female education. The shaded bars are the statistically significant ones. So 3 out of 5 values, gender egalitarianism, institutional distrust, and generalized trust, in interaction with female education, produce statistically significant effects in positive direction, meaning that when interacted with female education, these inherited values foster non-marital birth rates. In the case of inherited family ties, we see a negative and a significant effect, which was also what we expected. But for religiosity, we see a negative effect. It's the expected direction, but the impact is not statistically significant. Let me be more explicit about the interaction and how we interpret it. Here, as you can see, we have two lines. Sorry, I forgot to edit, but the blue line is the mean female education, and the green line would be the mean female education increased by 2 standard deviations. For both lines, the increased gender egalitarianism, inherited gender egalitarianism, of course, has a positive effect on non-marital birth rates. But consider this. So in the left-hand side, the countries that you see in the left-hand side are the countries which score low in gender egalitarianism. And in the right-hand side, the countries are the ones that score higher in gender egalitarianism. So the inherited values are much more gender egalitarian in the right-hand side. What is interesting to see here is that gender egalitarianism increases non-marital birth rates more effectively in countries where there is this structural change happening much more, like this female education rates are going much higher. A contrasting story lies in inherited family ties. So again, here, if you remember, these are the significant results. And you can see here that countries that have stronger family ties have slower diffusion of second demographic transition for both lines, but the effect of education on the spread of second demographic transition is less powerful in countries where there are stronger family ties. So, as a conclusion, we argue that it is important to acknowledge long-standing cultural traits, and they may come to forefront when structural changes are happening in terms of their impact on the unfolding of certain demographic trends. So specific value differences transmitted across generations may bring more rigor into the explanation of persisting variations in demographic trends. Thank you for listening.